Oh my goodness, this is absolutely such a game changer. So I just started doing this as I finished this book. Essentially, hi lovelies, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a happy and productive week. Today's video is not just how to be more productive and happy. Essentially, I want to be talking to you about how to improve your clarity so you can make better decisions, which will inevitably improve your overall productivity, but also well-being. And the topic I really want to cover today is all about digital minimalism. So I picked up a copy of this book by Newport, already annotated quite a bit, and I wanted to briefly touch on that. What I have come to learn from his work though is how much of a role social media and technology is currently playing on our overall attention span, our focus, and our well-being. And if we are going to be living in this hyper-connected and overstimulated world, we need to know how to use these tools in an optimal way so that they are serving us and we are not serving them. This is going to allow us to get more work done, be more productive, be happier, stress less, and feel a lot less overwhelmed. So if you want to know all of these nuggets of gold and words of wisdom that I have picked up from his work, and also just my own experience working in social media, running my own business, and trying to navigate this just hectic world, which is, you know, always glorifying this idea of being busy and contactable and switched on, then keep watching. And if you find this video helpful, please let me know by giving it a big thumbs up, liking it, leave a comment down below. You can even leave a video suggestion for an upcoming one that I create, and of course subscribe. Anyway, let's get straight into today's video. I think before I get into some of his more recent work in digital minimalism, one of the most important takeaways I took from Indistractable is the fact that the more that we are using social media in our day-to-day lives, the more it can, and not necessarily that it will, but the more that it can impair our overall attention span. If we are constantly hopping from one thing to the next and never allowing ourselves to fully be immersed in a task, but in fact allowing us to be distracted by social media, by internal or external triggers, whether it's an impulsive need to check our phone or check an email or send a text message or anything like that, or an external trigger, whether it's the phone ringing and, you know, email notifications pinging and things like that that pull our attention from the task at hand. All of those things fragment our attention. All of those things are competing for our attention. And so we're not able to do our best work. So it was quite confronting to realize that our attention span is shrinking over time, and that if you think about the technology and the content that's currently available online, the shorter content that we're now consuming is reflective of the shorter attention spans that we have. And it used to be that they would say about the first 3 seconds of a video to grab someone's attention. And now it's like the first 0.3 of a second, not even 1 second. So we're used to just constantly consuming and we want everything now. And that really inhibits our ability to then sit down and get our really good, high quality work done, because we're not used to sitting down at a desk for long periods of time. And we sort of just expect that we should be able to, but it's something that we have to practice day to day, not just when we're working, but outside of that work time as well. So that was something that really stood out to me in this book. There's a lot of different tips for how to become indistractable and how to control for those internal and external triggers, certainly majority of which are brought on by technology and social media, which is why we need better boundaries, which he then goes on to talk about in this book. That's just something that really stood out to me in this work, and just 2 things that I've been doing after reading Digital Minimalism and Indistractable. One is when I sit down to work, I turn off my internet connection if I don't need it because I don't want that tempting me. And not only do I have my phone out of sight, out of mind when I work, I actually invested in a second work phone where all of my apps are stored for social media, so that I have to be really deliberate with when I'm on social media, and I try and allocate it to just work time. And I certainly can't check emails outside of work time because I'll have this phone turned off and it's usually popped away in my bag in the cupboard. So those are a couple of little hacks that I thought I would share before we get into this book here. But I thought, let's get straight into digital minimalism now, and why I think that it's so important, especially as we are entering a new year, this fresh start, and we all want to make 2022 probably our most productive and best year yet, as we say at the start of every year. I thought, let's get into talking about this topic of digital minimalism, because I think it's just really important that we understand how to use technology to serve us and not the other way around. So essentially, this book is full of like practical tips for managing and monitoring your tech use. But one thing that really impressed me near the start of this book was the idea that it's important to optimize the technology that we are using. Not only being selective with the tools that we're employing, but then using them in a way that we're maximizing their efficiency. So for example, say that you wanted to use social media to catch up on the latest news. You could just go onto Google or 9MSN or scroll through social media and just see what comes up. But you could also be really selective and choose an app like Instapaper, and you can clip different articles as you go and save them and read them when it's convenient for you. But you can also go one step further and further optimize that action. So he says, perhaps as the final step in this optimization, you discover through trial and error that you're best able to absorb complex articles when you clip them throughout the week, sit down to read them through all on a Saturday morning on a tablet or coffee at a local cafe. At this point, your optimization efforts have massively increased the value you receive from this personal technology process for staying informed. And so he goes on to talk about how a lot of these social media apps, or just different apps in general and websites, they're all still quite new. So they're still quite novel and fun. And the intention is to keep us active on these platforms for as long as possible. But when we put a little bit more effort in, and this is something that majority of people don't do, which is how they get hooked and they end up distracted and procrastinating and honestly just mentally drained, because these technologies are vying for your mental attention, which could have been utilized better in other areas like focusing on your work or your personal life. But when we just give a little bit more thought and intention as to how we want to use technology, we are putting ourselves back in the driver's seat. And that's why for me, I've noticed that, my laptop helps me to work on my second book, but I don't need the internet connection when I'm working. Otherwise, it's actually going to pull me away from the task at hand. Or I do need to check my emails, but I don't need my notifications on, and I don't need it on my personal phone. Or I do need a phone, but maybe I can also have a work phone with particular boundaries around when I'm going to use it, so that I get to choose when I'm on social media, and I get to create limits or set time limits for how long I want to allocate my attention to these apps by putting a little alarm on my phone that goes off at 2 o'clock when I can check Instagram, but 2:30 when I should get off my phone. Otherwise, I become a slave to the technology and it's no longer serving me. And then one other thing that really comes into play when we think about digital minimalism is the deprivation of solitude and the importance of solitude for deep thinking and making better decisions and having improved mental clarity. When we're constantly on our devices, whether it's a phone, tablet, laptop, tuned into the internet, podcasts and music, we are depriving ourselves of solitude. And you don't have to experience solitude by being in a room with zero noise. You can also experience solitude when you're at a park or in a cafe. It's simply just about not being plugged into something. If anything, it's unplugging, and it's allowing your mind to just think peacefully. And not be bombarding it with unnecessary additional stimuli. When we are always plugged into our devices, we're not allowing ourselves to have that time of solitude that we're otherwise really used to having until very recently. And so Cal Newport, the author of this book, talks a little bit about President Lincoln and how he would actually venture to, I believe it was like one of his cottages, just to get away from all of the noise and all of the external input so that he could navigate a lot of the challenges of his presidency and make better decisions. And so when we are practicing digital minimalism, we're creating not only more time in our day because we're not always hooked into technology, we're also creating more space in our minds for better thinking. Another tip which I have been employing in my day-to-day life for a while now is this idea of tech-free time, which he talks about in more detail, and gives some other examples as to how to incorporate that more into your day-to-day lives. But I like to do what I call as a social media Sabbath. So I do not go on social media on the weekends. I don't think I post on weekends for a while now. If I do, send me a DM and be like, Jess, get off your phone. But I try and not be online on weekends. I don't have my phone at the dinner table, so I have like no phone zones as well. That's something he talks about. But then another thing, and this is like a really good little nugget of wisdom closer to the end of the book that I thought I would share without spoiling all of the other things that are sprinkled through his work. I loved this idea of scheduling specific time for texting. Oh my goodness, this is absolutely such a game changer. So I just started doing this as I finished this book. Essentially, you put your phone on silent or do not disturb, and you allocate time in the day where you're going to go and check your phone, because otherwise you might get 15 texts in a day and like 5 calls in a day. And that's a lot of time to be checking your phone. And then every time you check your phone, you're more likely to also be tempted to use different apps that you otherwise weren't planning to go and use. So it's almost like how I would schedule checking my emails, because you're silencing all those notifications and you're choosing when to respond. So I loved that idea, and I know I don't want to spoil all of his beautiful work in this book, but I really wanted to share that because it's something that I'm now trialing. I did make sure to put all of my loved ones as favorites on my phone so that when it's on Do Not Disturb, I still allow all favorites to get through just in case there's like an emergency. But I believe that if someone calls more than twice, the phone lets the call come through, so you won't miss anything important. So I hope that you enjoyed some of these tips about how to be a digital minimalist. I thought it was fitting for the start of the year to talk about essentially how to organize your time in a more efficient way to increase your mental clarity and therefore boost your productivity and well-being. I think technology has a big place in our lives, but it's important that it doesn't act as a drainer or a time waster. And I think that often that is the trap. That is the challenge that we experience. So if you found these tips helpful, and if you've read any of his work, or you want to leave some additional tips for how you take back control for social media and organize your time, leave them all in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, give this video a big thumbs up, give it a like, subscribe, check out my account on Instagram at Study with Jess for more tips and tricks. I'll leave all my resources down below as well in the description box. But I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Mwah! Bye.